It seems like this election's really heating up. We have another Trump story. Former President Trump accused Florida Governor Ron DeSantis of being a RINO globalist on Wednesday, continuing his attacks on the potential 2024 contender, widely viewed as his biggest competition for the Republican nomination. The real Ron is a RINO globalist who closed quickly down Florida and even its beaches, Trump said in a post on Truth Social. Loved the vaccines and wasted big money on testing. How quickly people forget. RINO, one of Trump's favorite chaps for his fellow Republicans, stands for Republican in name only. Trump has repeatedly attacked DeSantis as he continues to ramp up his own 2024 campaign, which he launched just 1 week after the midterm elections in November. In his latest series of jabs at the Florida governor, Trump accused DeSantis on Saturday of trying to rewrite history on his COVID-19 response and claimed it would be a great act of disloyalty for DeSantis to launch his own presidential bid. If he runs, that's fine. I'm way up in the polls. He's going to have to do what he wants to do, but he may run, Trump said following a campaign swing through New Hampshire and South Carolina over the weekend. I do think it would be a great act of disloyalty because, I got him in. He had no chance. His political life was over. The former president who endorsed DeSantis in 2018 has often taken credit for DeSantis' successful bid for governor. DeSantis has largely refused to engage Trump amid his attacks. I roll out of bed. I have people attacking me from all angles, the Florida governor said at a press conference on Tuesday. It's been happening for many, many years. However, DeSantis did hit back on the accusations about his COVID-19 record. When you're an elected executive, you have to make all kinds of decisions. You got to steer that ship, DeSantis said. And the good thing is that the people are able to render a judgment on that, whether they reelect you or not. And I'm happy to say, in my case, not only did we win a reelection, we won with the highest percentage of the vote that any Republican governor candidate has in the history of the state of Florida, he added. Now, I've made this very clear. I'm no fan of DeSantis. I'm no fan of anything having to do with him. He's a guy who, when he first took office, it was surprisingly good to see how bipartisan he was. He was actually trying to work with Democrats. And then after the virus started, he descended into hyper partisanship. But I'm going to defend him here, at least as far as I'm not defending what he did, but I am admitting that Trump lied on him. Now, RINO is a stupid term that a lot of Republicans, both politicians and the little pissant commentators on Twitter and other websites, use whenever someone who is on their side doesn't vote or side with them in every single which way. This is why an individual like Liz Cheney, who voted with Trump 92% of the time when he was in office, ends up losing her House seat because she condemns him over his compliance with a coup to overturn the last presidential election. But to get into some specifics, because I really sometimes feel like I live in the twilight zone as far as people say these things and their followers or supporters just believe it. This cult like mentality, where Trump says Ron is a RINO globalist who closed quickly down Florida and even its beaches. DeSantis was a guy, and all of this stuff is public record. So if you don't believe me, you can look this up for yourself. He's an individual who offered to pay police that were from other states to relocate and work to Florida, and specifically appeal to them, referring to officers who refused to comply with vaccine requirements in their respective states. He is an individual who at one point signed an executive order that rescinded the state of emergency and all COVID-related public health orders. And even as his state was having a record surge of this virus that was killing people, he refused to re-sign those orders or to really do anything in regard to putting up more protections. In fact, he's someone who actually, last year made his state the only one to not pre-order vaccines for children under 5. The only one out of all of them. And again, we can go further. We can talk about the fact that he tried to impose, or rather did sign a legislative package that imposed fines on businesses and hospitals requiring, people to do something to protect themselves from the virus. So there's a whole bunch of stuff he did that was in support of people who didn't want to wear masks, who didn't want to take the vaccine, and was outright antagonistic to people who did want to protect themselves. So, and when I mention that, I'm not saying it because I agreed with him doing that. I'm mentioning it because to characterize him as someone who loved the vaccine when he was hostile towards it, more so than probably any other governor in America, is complete BS. And Trump is lying. And this goes back to what I said about how you look at what Trump said about him. What was it earlier this week? Oh, great act of disloyalty if he runs against me. Oh, we'll handle things the way I handle. He is scared that his little grip on the GOP is slipping and getting tinier and tinier, and that this governor from Florida, who he admittedly did help win his first term. I'm not going to say that he made him, because Florida is a purple state that can go one way or the other. So whether Trump endorsed him or not, we don't know to what extent. And it was a very close race, by the way, him and Gillum. Um, but he's seeing that this guy that he played some role in getting elected, who pretty much is identical to him on most issues, minus the crazy conspiracy stuff, which is more appealing to moderates. They don't like all that, unprovable garbage. Is closing the gap on him, is doing well in polls, and is most likely going to both get support from the establishment and not sit idly by hoping that the disgraced, washed up ex-president doesn't run or drops out before he gets in. He's more than willing and more than capable of upstaging him. And I'm of the belief that if it's a direct head-to-head matchup between DeSantis and Trump, DeSantis will probably end up winning. And it's such a shame because Trump is at his best as a candidate, not as a politician, but just as a person who speaks. When he talked about, don't cut Medicare and Social Security, even though when he was president he tried to do that, but I digress. When he talks about, the forgotten men and women, the jobs that are being shipped to Mexico and Canada with NAFTA and all the rest of these garbage trade deals. But when he starts getting into this panic mode where he's spread, and this is something he's done with plenty of people he's run against, spread lies, not tell the truth, and in some cases it's like borderline Twilight Zone. I mean, how do you take a governor who could be argued as one of the most antagonistic against protections relating to stopping people from getting COVID, and say that he loved the vaccines? Like I said, no fan of DeSantis. I think I think he's a terrible governor, and I think he'd be an awful president. But I'm not going to sit here and act like Trump is telling the truth on him, especially if the truth actually would make him look better than he is, and not show you the full record. Like I said, as a commentator, I always try to give you the facts, and if you don't believe me, you can look this stuff up yourself.